Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Gonna be getting back to work on the MR2 in this video. Where we left off, I was having some issues with the axle. I've got a bolt that I need to get extracted because it is rounded out inside the hex fitting. So that's the first thing I'm gonna work on, is getting that out, so that way I can go ahead and get the driver's side axle installed into the car. Real quick, just a little update on the Cobra. As you can see right here, starting to get more and more parts in. I've got the coil, bracket, I've got mechanical linkage for the throttle, fuel system components, the gauges and whatnot. So definitely more coming on that car. But yeah, for now I'm working on getting the MR2 sorted out. So that being said, first thing I'm gonna do is I did get a cheap hex key socket. I'm gonna get that welded into the rounded out bolt and then see if I can get it pulled out. So I hammered the socket into the problematic bolt. So now I'm gonna go ahead and try and get this thing welded in. I did clean everything up with some brake parts cleaner to try and get any oil and grease off of the areas I'm welding to. Well, that was $7 wasted. As you can see, the end of the Allen bit just basically snapped as soon as I started putting torque on it. So was welded in, didn't last. The actual tool itself broke. So on to the next plan. All right, mission somewhat accomplished. Got pissed off. Plan B was take a death wheel to it. So cut the head of the bolt off at the spacer, but didn't damage the spacer at all. And now I can get these spacers off and use those on my axle. What I'll have to do then to basically sell these axles is separate the stub from the axle, and then I'll have at least a length of that bolt that I can work on trying to get out that way and hopefully salvage the stub. So that's where we're at on it. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these removed and cleaned up, and then I can go ahead and put the axle in the driver's side. Well, that was way easier than I expected it to be. Got the 5 bolts that still had heads on them out, removed the 3 washers, separated everything, and literally just unscrewed what was left of the other bolt by hand. It was easy now that there was no tension on it. So yeah, so that's good. This axle will be salvageable. I'll be able to get it online, get it for sale with the other one. So that's a win for me. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and get those cleaned up, and then I can start installing the new axle. Real quick detour. Next day, just got back from the body shop, and I now have my front bumper back. So they fixed the few imperfections that were found after the paint job was done. So just got this back. It's all cleaned up, polished, nice. Very happy with the results. So once I get the new dryer and can recharge the AC, I'll get this installed. For now, I'm going to leave it off just so that way I have easy access to the dryer, because being that the lines were opened, I want to replace that so there's fresh desiccant in the system. All right, so before I get back to the axle and installing the driver's side, yesterday I did get the box in the mail with the new fuel pressure regulator housing as well as the replacement line I had ordered. So I'm going to go ahead, get this stuff sorted out first. That way I can let the line sealer that I'm going to be using on the housing and fittings set overnight before trying to start this thing tomorrow and double checking for leaks. So I'm gonna go ahead, get the old one completely out and disassembled and start getting everything put together. All right, so here's the old setup pulled out, and here is where I damaged the regulator housing fitting. You can see it's kind of mangled a little bit. That was just from a wrench bending it in ever so slightly, but that is where my leak was as far as this goes. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this old housing removed. I need to get the C-clip removed and the actual regulator itself out, and then I can go ahead and get everything swapped over. All right, and here we are. The assembly has been put back together, swapped over the actual regulator unit, new plug put in. I need to clean up some of that sealer that's on there. I used same thing that I did on thread previously. It's Permatex Super 300 Forma gasket. It's supposed to be fuel proof, so that I put that basically on anything I threaded in. It's on the fitting that goes into the regulator, the top fitting in the regulator. I used the new one that it came with. since the old one was just looking a little beat up and battered from on and off so many times. And then I also put it on the plug for the gauge. So all of the threads have that sealer on them. This one, this adapter fitting has it on both sides because I previously put it on the side that screws into the fuel filter, along with the copper crush washer you can see there. And then there's new O-rings on this fitting and the top fitting as well. So new O-rings, seal on the thread, let it sit overnight, then I'll install it and pray that there are no more fuel leaks. Because if that doesn't do it, I really don't know what's going to. So I'm going to let this sit and then get on to the axle installation. All right, and here's the driver's side axle. Got all the grease in there. Everything's been worked in. I just basically would, grab the thing and go up and down and pivot at different angles just to work the grease down into the balls. And then as you can see, the cork gasket's just in place. Again, just used a little bit of grease on the lip, and that's enough to hold it in place. I do have to spin it ever so slightly because it's covering the bowl holes a little bit. But next will be to get this thing put into the vehicle, put the axle in the hub side first, get the end bolt or end nut on, and then you can pivot it however is needed to line up the 6 bolt holes on the subshaft and get this thing installed. So I'm going to go ahead and get to work on that. All right, here we go. Everything is installed on this side. I kind of walked them around in a circle down slowly in a couple different passes just to make sure everything was lined up and threaded through properly. I did use blue Loctite on all 6 of these, and then I did torque them to 65 Newton meters per the book. Still, again, have to do the end nuts. I'll do those later. I'm going to need to get something pretty heavy duty on here to torque those to the 217 foot-pounds, but at least the axles are installed at this time. Again, a couple tricks I used. One, make sure you have this back link bolted into place so the hub stays somewhat in place. And then I just used the breaker bar between a couple of lug nuts, kind of had it wedged against my knee on one side while I used the torque wrench on the other side with an angle and hex socket. So all set there. Axles are bolted into the stub shafts on the transmission. All right, so it is the next day, and I have a little update here. I'm sure this is not what you were expecting to see. I was going through some of Mark's videos this morning, and I came to realize that I made a little bit of an error with the capacitors. I totally forgot that they have a polarity they need to follow, a negative side and a positive side. So I decided to pull my tack out to see if I got lucky or did not with the 2 capacitor installs. Well, I got half lucky. The one that's still in here, I did put that in right. This side right here is the negative. I did check it with a tester, and this is the ground bolt right here. I checked that versus the 2 terminals, and the negative side is in the right terminal for this one, but I had it backwards in this capacitor. So as you can see, I've pulled it out. It's sitting right there, so I'm going to reinstall it. For that one, the negative needs to go to the top. So the top for that one, and it is this side where my fingers are for that capacitor, are the 2 ground sides. So I'm going to go ahead, get this one installed, and then I can put the tack and the cluster back in the car, and then I can get back to work with reinstalling the fuel stuff and hopefully fire this thing up and have 3 things off the list. Hopefully I'll have a working tack, a fuel system that does not leak, and the axles are installed. All right, capacitors in, and just to show you, I've got the one side of the continuity tester on the ground, and you can see here and here are the 2 grounds. Nothing here, nothing here. So that just shows you this is the one and this is the one for when you're installing the capacitors. All right, so now that that issue with the gauge cluster is resolved and the capacitors are incorrect, I'm going to go ahead and install the regulator and filter back into the car. This has had all night to dry, so any of the sealant I put on the threads should be good and cured at this point in time. So hopefully we can get this thing put back in the car, get the fuel system hooked up, fire it up, and I am praying no more leaks. So I'm gonna go ahead, get this all installed. It's gonna be the new regulator, this new line here, because like I said, on the other one, the fitting on the inside is damaged from the fitting that was on the regulator, digging into it a little bit. So didn't want to take any chances and replacing the line as well. So I'm gonna go ahead, get all this installed, and we'll go from there. All right, new line is in. Everything's tightened up. Got the intake installed, so I'm gonna go ahead, get this thing fired up. And fingers crossed, leaks are done, and we have a working tach and everything else. So yeah, let's see what happens. All right, well, it's running, and as you can see, I have a working tach. That is awesome. I did not have that previously. It's reading like 1300 RPM right now in warm-up mode. Let's see what we have on the reader. Should be about a little over 1000 RPM right now, according to that. Here we're reading a little high, but it's like 1250 on that. So I know there's going to be disparity because OEM electronics, but hey, I'll take it. I at least have a tach that's working at the moment. That's a plus. I'm going to crawl under the car and see how the fuel system's looking. All right, underneath the car, and so far, so good. It hasn't been running long, so I'm going to give it a little while longer, see what happens. But right now we're dry. Let's see what this gets us. All right, car's been running for a while now, and I don't see any sign of wetness or fuel leaks. So I think we can finally mark the fuel system off the list. Looks like we have got a good dry system, no more leaks. So I think that is job done as far as fuel system goes. All right, and then going back up top, coolant temperature is around 174, 176. RPM sitting right there, running around 700 according to the scan tool. And here we got our coolant gauge reading good. Tach, it definitely reads a little high. I mean, it's saying it's just under 1000, but that's not bad. But the best part is the sound and the sweep. Oh, that sounds so good. And that tach jumps like crazy. So, all right, I think we got a couple jobs here that are done, and I can mark some wins off the list. Coolant gauge fixed, tach fixed, fuel leak fixed, axles installed other than tightening down the end nuts. I'll have to do that when I do the suspension bolts. But I want to clean up the K-member and all of the suspension arms and whatnot before I officially get them installed, because they're all covered with years of grit and grime. So that being said, I think this is a really good spot to end this video. I want to end one on multiple wins. Haven't done that in a little while. So yeah, we're going to call it a day here. Hope you're enjoying what you're seeing. Hope you learned some stuff on this. I've obviously made some mistakes along the way. One of them was documented today with the capacitors. So hopefully you make note of that. But yeah, if you're enjoying what you're seeing, please hit like, please hit subscribe, please hit the notification bell. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.